So thanks all for coming on the day before Christmas break. What I wanted to show is some of the work that we've been doing to try and teach creativity and innovation through engineering. So we've been working with a number of different partners, and the stuff we develop works everywhere from in the kindergarten age group all the way through college. So you can see we have some middle school girls building robots right here, or you can do a Segway, which is a little bit more complicated. You have to know a little bit of control theory to make it work. So the first thing, though, I'd like to talk about really is what do I mean by engineering? So it's clear that what we're trying to do and how we're different from, say, science education or math education. So really there's three parts I see to the engineering process. The first one is really trying to set a goal. What is it that you want to solve? What is your problem? Identifying the need of what you want to solve. And once you've got the problem, the next step is to plot a path from where you are now to that goal. So how can you actually solve that particular problem? And realizing that you can use math and science to try and predict whether or not this path will work, and then construct this path knowing all your constraints as well as all your costs to eventually actually be able to build whatever it is you're going to build. Realizing along the way that as you start to go down this path, it might not have been the right path, and you have to continually readjust your path so that you finally get to the goal that you originally set out for. So this requires things like iteration, like failure, stuff that usually doesn't get into schools as much as it should. We learn more actually from failure usually than success, so how can we get kids and actually adults to fail often so that you can succeed once? So in this case, we have Lego people building Lego people. It's kind of the Terminator thing, you know. So this is my problem. I don't know if I can stand still for 45 minutes. This is going to be tough.
Yeah, hold on to the mic.
That's right. The problem is right now that kids are not learning engineering in schools. They're not understanding really why they have to learn math and science in schools. And we firmly believe at the center that if our kids if the next generation doesn't graduate from high school with some engineering, math, and science knowledge, how can we expect them to really be able to help develop new policies, vote on existing policies, and really do it from a scientifically sound point of view? So in other words, I think that if we don't improve our STEM education, we will be having an energy crisis every 20 years. So how do we get that in the classrooms? One quote that is kind of nice is this was out of the Hart-Rudman Commission on National Security in 2001. This was actually 6 months before September 11th. They came out with this. They actually predicted some sort of terrorist strike as well. The inadequacies of our system of research and education pose a greater threat to the US national security over the next quarter century than any other potential conventional war that we might imagine. So people definitely realize that this is a problem. And so how can we go about solving it? So 15 years ago, we started the Center for Engineering Education and Outreach at Tufts to try and work with partners to actually solve these problems. Our mission really is to excite all students at every level about learning math, science, and engineering through research-informed tools and activities. So it's not to get more engineers, it's to make sure that everybody is engineering literate. The center has 4 parts to it. We have a graduate program in engineering education. One of the graduate students in that program is here, if you guys want to talk educational theory. We have a tool development program where we develop tools, probably the most famous of which is RoboLab, which is underneath the LEGO Mindstorms product. We have an outreach program where we work with thousands of teachers on every single continent except for Antarctica. And then we have a professional development program for teachers. So you can see that there's no reason to keep your Legos dry. Legos are made of plastic. They can go underwater just as well as they can go above water. So we have a whole 5th grade middle school science set of activities for teaching water quality actually with submarines, which is a lot more fun. So just in case you still don't believe me, though, let me give you some quotes that I've heard growing up. The first one you hear all the time. It's okay that Johnny doesn't know how to do math. Why? I can't even balance my own checkbook. Yet you never hear anybody say it's okay that Johnny doesn't know how to read because I don't know how to read. So why is it that adults feel it's okay to role model lack of science and engineering knowledge? I'm not a science person. I'm not a math person, but not reading and writing. I've often heard people tell me that they're scared to fly. so dangerous? They just heard about a crash. So why is the average American statistics knowledge seriously lacking, and how can we change that? And then my favorite one of them all was my wife was sitting in a Southwest plane. They're on the runway. They're starting to take off. And I don't know if you guys remember, but Southwest used to have those seats that face each other. And I guess when seats face each other, you kind of have to talk to the person across from you. So this woman leans over to my wife, and she says, if we went this fast when we were in the air, we'd get there so much faster. And this is when they're on the runway. My wife goes, no. You go much faster when you're in the air. By this time, the plane's taken off, and they're up in the air. And she goes, well, no, look. The cars are going faster than we are. My wife tries to explain, no, that was a mountain you just flew by. So these are some of the issues that we're trying to tackle, to teach people really what the basics of science and engineering is, how to solve problems on your own, and actually how to make it interesting and exciting by making it creative and individual. So we believe strongly that there needs to be some engineering education in the schools from kindergarten up. And in fact, we helped put in the first engineering state standard in Massachusetts, which covers all the different age groups. Why? Because engineering gives you not only the hard skills in math and science and logic and in programming, but it also gives you the soft skills that I mentioned earlier about how to problem solve, how to work in teams, how to communicate. This was one of the things I do with my students at college. We build robotic animals. They were a particularly competitive group, and so we had to see if Darwin was actually correct. And Darwin won out over intelligent design. Intelligent design didn't work with Lego, especially not with us building. So, all right, so if we need to have engineering education, why does it have to happen in the elementary school? Why can't we have it in the high schools? And really, what we've found is that if you want everybody to understand engineering, math, and science, you have to do it before adolescence. For those of you who have kids, I'm sure you've noticed that as kids go through adolescence, they go from being physically curious to socially curious. And engineering is all about the physical world. So the first 3 or 4 years of their education are extremely important for them to discover what's going on around them. And we spend most of that time actually teaching them how to read. For some reason, it's very important to us that our child can read Harry Potter before they turn 8, but not nearly as important that our kids understand how the car works. In fact, one of my good friends who's done this far longer than I have always says, why is it that in 3rd grade we spend so much time teaching our kids about volcanoes, yet we spend no time teaching them about cars? And I can guarantee you when they turn 20, every single one of them will be driving a car, will be in a car, and not one of them will be inside a volcano. So the second part of this, though, is we really need to have the research that shows that the effectiveness of these types of education. So we have a research program at Tufts and trying to answer this, and there's a number of other research programs across the country now that are starting up in engineering education. And you find some really interesting things. Probably the one I think is most interesting is looking at the gender differences in learning. So for instance, if I took this group here, and I asked all of you to start building a car, I would pretty much guarantee that every single one of the males in this room would start grabbing Lego bricks and building before they had any idea of what it was they were going to build. Whereas most of the women and girls would stop and think, what are they going to build before they grab Lego bricks? This is a problem because if I have boy-girl groups, by the time she's come up with an idea of what she wants to build, he's already started to build, and he's not going to rip apart what he's built just for her, because even if her idea is better. So how you structure the classroom can make a big difference. Another thing we look a lot about is how people learn. So everybody learns slightly differently. So this idea that there's one right way to teach anything is just simply wrong. So really what a teacher needs to do is present stuff in many different guises in many different ways, many different representations, so that each child can learn according to whatever works best for him or for her. And this is true for adults as well. And so actually what we develop for kids is substantially different from what we would develop if we were trying to teach adults. And it turns out we actually spend a lot of our time teaching adults because the teachers have not learned any of this material before either. And so we've spent a fair amount of our time trying to restructure what we do so that it works for both age groups. I guess the final story I'd like to give on the gender difference. The gender difference particularly interests me because that's Kim, my daughter. This is back before she pierced her ears, started to wear makeup, and went through adolescence. But what was interesting about Kim is that she grew up in a family where we did a lot of construction. Her two older brothers do a lot of construction, and she literally has no interest in building anything. And so why is that? It wasn't in the environment in this case, or we don't think so, because we did so much in the environment to promote building. And so we soon realized a lot of it is just simply how you pose the problem and what you pose as a problem. So women and girls tend to be very much interested in the bigger picture of what you're trying to do and how it's affecting society. Men, in general, don't tend to be nearly as interested in that as whether or not they can just make it supercharged, super cool, and super powerful. One of my favorite stories with regard to that was, this is now about 12 years ago, or 13 years ago, we decided we wanted to teach fluid mechanics to fourth graders. Mainly because if you understand fluid mechanics, you can understand everything in this world. The world's based on fluid mechanics and Navier-Stokes equations, in case you didn't know that. So the best way to do this is to bring a toilet into the classroom. So we did. We brought a toilet, we stuck it up in the front of the classroom, we asked the class, how do you think the toilet works? What's in the tank of the toilet? And all the kids took a piece of paper, they filled in, they drew a box for the tank of the toilet, they filled it in. My favorite was this one boy who had a gas turbine engine inside the tank of his toilet. But the difference was that the guys had the box and they filled in the box. The girls filled in the box with equally bizarre solutions, but then they also had the toilet itself and the sink next to the toilet. And one girl had the mountain that you could see through the window that was above the sink next to the toilet. No guy thought anything but the tank of the toilet. So really, what questions you pose and how you pose them makes a huge difference. In engineering, typically people pose very specific problems. We need to design a gear train. So if you can change how you pose the problems and what problems you pose, you can engage the girls far more. What I wanted to show most today, though, were some of the tools that we've been developing, because I think that's what's the most fun to show off, basically. And so I wanted to start with the stop-action movie work we're doing. And the idea here is to give kids different ways to tell you their story. So as a teacher, one of the things you're always trying to do is figure out what's in the mind of the kid, right? And then how can you change that to agree with what science currently believes is true? So usually, how do we find that out? We ask them to write about it. So can you write me a lab report? Can you write me how you solved the math problem? Can you write me a book report? Well, if you don't like writing, that's not a very effective way to get across what's going on in the kid's head. So what if we come up with different ways? So what if we come up with a way to actually make a stop-action movie? So let's make a quick stop-action movie. You can see this is our software here. And I can snap an image. And then I can move it forward just a little bit, snap an image again, move it forward a little bit, snap an image again, move it forward a little bit. And this is really exciting, isn't it? And pretty soon we have Wallace and Gromit, which we sell for millions of dollars. And we can play that. And you can see I have my movie. I can change my time base and all that. Pretty simple. So I can use this to do three things. I can use it to tell a story. I can use it to predict a story. Or I can actually use it backwards, and I can try and deconstruct and see whether the people have the physics correct in the story that they've written. So let me show you some examples of at least the first two. Telling the story. I can tell the story as a book report. So this is the story of Artemis Fowl. I don't know how many of you guys have read Artemis Fowl here. This was excellent. This was a preview done by a third grader of the new book that was coming out at that point. That's Butler on the right there, and Artemis Fowl with the jewel in the middle. So you can actually just this is a different way to do book reports, and we've had classes break the book up into multiple chapters, and then as a class produce all of Harry Potter Book 2, or all of a number of other books. So, and this goes on and on. The amazing thing is how much time and effort the kids put into this just because you're changing the medium with what they tell you their ideas. So we can also do this for asking them how they understand various science concepts. And these are actually out of Bill Church's high school physics class. So you can talk to him afterwards if you have questions. But he just asked him to explain to him what temperature was. And so they were able to do this with beans. The picture on the right was something I did in my daughter's 4th grade, asking him to explain the phases of the moon. And you'd be amazed at the discussions that the kids go through as they're working in a team to make this movie. Because they think they know, and somebody else thinks they know, and they have different models, and so they have to discuss it between each other to come up with one model for the movie. And that's really where most of the learning is going on. But I can also turn this around, and this is what Bill came up with in his high school class, which I think is brilliant. The idea of trying to predict and make your movie physically accurate. So in this case, I know the time base of my movie, where should the basketball be every 1/10 of a second? And I put the basketball there, and then I turn this into a movie. So you can see here, he's looking at the X versus Y, so that the kids understand how the two of them act individually, and then together how you get the trajectory of the basketball. On the right is the final movie that they actually made, with blue screening in the background of them shooting the basketball. The neat thing about this story is these guys finished this movie on the last day of class. They stayed late, the last day of their senior year. So I mean, how many seniors do you know that stay after school the last day of their senior year to do physics? And all we've done is just change the medium with which they're reporting back their knowledge to us. The next one we do a lot with, and as I said, is the Lego classroom, where we've done everything from preschool all the way through college. So let me show you some examples of those. We use this to teach all sorts of different subjects. So, but for instance, let's start with math. So for those of you who haven't played with Lego robotics, you have a Lego robot. It's got a couple motors. You can, let's pull some of this stuff off. So I have 2 motors here, and I can put a shaft in the back to be a bumper. And I can turn it on, and I can download a program into my little Lego car. So what we do in the first grade is actually get them to just drive forward for a certain amount of time. So let's go forward. Being kindergartners, we'll go max speed for 2 seconds. I can download that program into my robot. But first, I probably have to plug my robot into my computer. We'll try that again. Okay, and then I can hit run. I can disconnect it, and if I hit run, you can see that goes for, what do we say, 2 seconds. I can stick it on the ground, and it'll drive forward for 2 seconds, then come to an abrupt stop. Yeah, that's pretty exciting, isn't it? We can improve matters, because, you know, nobody really drives these days without playing music along the way, so let's go for a little bit longer, and let's add a little bit of music. I'm going to take off the motors, though, because it's hard to hear the music over the motors. So being a classical musician, we decided there should be a lot of classical music in here. How about a little bit of a Grieg is always good. So we can download our program, and if we hit run this time, can you hear it? Amazing. Mono fidelity, 4-bit. And if you don't like our music, which most people don't, you can go ahead and write your own music, which is where students will spend hours and hours, because, you know, you need a good operatic death song at the end of every robotic competition. So what we do, so actually what we'll do in the beginning is just to get kids to drive a certain distance. So they'll drive for 2 seconds, and they'll see that it goes almost as far as they wanted to go. But, you know, it didn't quite go as far. So then they'll go for 3 seconds, and that goes too far. And the idea is, well, OK, we need some number between 2 and 3. And that's how we introduce fractions and decimal numbers to them. And they quickly realize that they want to go maybe 2.5 seconds. And what's interesting is they'll type in 2.5, and they'll get really frustrated because they want 2.5. And what the software is telling them they have is 2.50. They don't want 2.50. They want 2.5. So that starts the discussion of, well, what is the role of the 0 in the back? And this is something now they're interested in learning about it. We can take the same problem and make it a little bit more complicated for the 2nd and 3rd grades by asking them to build a Lego car, and measure it, drive for 1 second, measure how far it goes, then drive for 2 seconds, measure how far it goes, and you build up this graph of time versus distance. And then what we do is once you've got this graph built up, we take your car, and we say we're going to put a little Lego minifigure at exactly 12 centimeters in front of your car. So they look at their graph, they figure out how long their car should go to go just 12 centimeters. So they're learning how to interpolate their graph. Then they line all the cars up. Everybody hits run at the same time, and we see who comes closest to just kissing their Lego person. A couple of people run over their Lego person, so you can pause and teach a little bit about ethics, unless it's Darth Vader was their Lego person. A couple of the greater stories are, there was one group in New Zealand that was an all-male group. They decided, well, if the competition was really who comes closest, then if my robot takes out everybody else's robot, I'm going to win. They didn't. They lost. There are people whose cars who go backwards. It's really quite entertaining. But what's amazing is we've done this now for 10 years in classrooms with all age groups, and they're always interested in doing it again, in trying to improve their times, in better understanding the math and the modeling that's going on underneath it. And again, it doesn't have to be Lego, and it doesn't have to be our activities. It's the idea that you're actually trying to solve problems, that you're doing engineering, and that's really what the driver is. So there's no reason we can't do exactly the same problem in college. So how many people in here have had controls? OK, good. So we can teach proportional controllers with this. So the idea is here's a program. All right, I'm going to have to leave the mic for this one. Here's a program where what we're going to do is we have a loop. We're going to loop through 1,000 times. We're just going to take what the encoder reads on the motor, subtract it from where we want to be, and multiply it by a constant proportionality. Wait for a little bit, and then go do this loop again and again. The whole time, I'm actually going to record what the encoder is reading. So we can download this. And in this case, I think the desired location is exactly 100 degrees, or a third of a rotation. So if we hit run, you can watch the tires. And you see it actually overshot a little bit and came back. Let's do it again. OK. We can upload that data, because remember, it was taking data the whole time. And you can see, yes, we got a little bit of overshoot. And then it was flat at 100 degrees. So the next question I want to do in my class is to teach people how to actually model this controller. So what I'll do is I'll have them go through the open loop solution, where I just turn a motor on at a given speed and record position versus time. And I can upload that. And then I can model my motor. And if you model it, you'll realize that there's a linear portion where friction is just balancing out the power. And then there's the acceleration portion here. So it turns out to be a linear plus exponential. So I can fit a line to it and get linear plus exponential equation. Once I have an equation that models my motors, I can actually go through and do a full model on the controller so that I can actually program it to go for some desired location. I can run it. And then I can compare the data, my model, to the existing data. And so you can see here, it didn't work all that. It worked OK. The black is the model, and the red is the data. I can then vary my model and see maybe get a little bit more ringing. We can try running that one and see if we get the same ringing. And watch the motors. You see how it jittered us a couple times? And we can again upload the data. And so what you find is that kids all of a sudden start to really why they're spending hours and hours in front of MATLAB in the simulation environment, because they have a physical analog to it. And there you can see the model does actually pretty well in predicting the jitter. We haven't tried this in first grade yet, but we will. So, but my favorite part about this robotics in the classroom is doing science experiments with it. So what we can do is I can take an accelerometer and connect it up. And I can say I want to take measurements on my accelerometer. I'm going to take measurements every 1/100th of a second. So I download this. It's going to take 100 points at 1/100th of a second. OK, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this on, and I'm going to throw it. I need some volunteer in the back to stand up to catch it. All right, you ready? The way back there? Yeah, you're perfect. I've never thrown it this far, but we'll see how it works. So the whole time, well done. The whole time it was flying through the air, it was taking acceleration readings. So we can actually see what our acceleration was. We can come back, connect it back up, and read our acceleration. We get the data back. And we can upload it. And so through this, we actually can measure our drag coefficient, and we can start to actually, we do all sorts of different things like jumping around with it, see if we get to 0G. The other thing you can do, though, is acceleration is actually quite a difficult subject to teach kids. So one of the problems we often run into when we're teaching, say, high school physics, is that kids, if you ask kids, well, if I throw this like this, what is the acceleration of the NXT the whole time it's flying through the air? And actually, a fair number of adults, as well as kids, will tell you that it decelerates and then accelerates towards the ground. When in fact, the instant it leaves my hand, it only has one acceleration the whole time. It's 1g downward. So what if I take the acceleration and I convert it into a frequency? And I'm going to actually make this louder so that you guys can hear it. I had this on the plane, and it gets a little bit embarrassing if it gets too loud on the plane, but. Okay, so now if you can hear, I have almost a theremin. Now listen to it as I throw it in the air. And then, you're doing this in class, kids are starting to understand, oh, okay, maybe it is the same acceleration the whole time, until one kid figures out that you can do this centrifugal acceleration too, and really mess around with your data. You can also have a lot of fun with an accelerometer because you can use this as a Wii to control another robot. So here's a case where some students in a university in Switzerland decided there's no reason they couldn't drive their robot with a steering wheel. So the two NXTs, the two Lego bricks, are connected through Bluetooth. The one of them in the steering wheel has an accelerometer. It measures the vector of g, and then it sends that out to the motors of the little Lego car. And so you drive it around. You can control the speed with a little angle indicator on the side. Again, very useful stuff. One of the neat things, though, is since the motors, you can actually use the motors as a haptic device so that you can actually give feedback to the controller, and they can see when they're coming near walls, and it will start to push back on them, which is very entertaining. So I wanted to show you a couple of examples of what kids have done all around the world with the Mindstorm stuff. And so these are all the different areas, countries that we work with currently with teachers. So you can see Antarctica is sadly white. The school population is fairly small. This is a group in China. They were showing me these pictures. They were making assistive devices for handicapped people, with my favorite being this one, and because obviously we all are slightly handicapped in that we can't fly. And so he's developed the solution to our problems. In New Zealand and Australia, these were a couple different schools that were showing me robotic animals they had built. For those of you who've been down in New Zealand, the last one I'm sure you'll recognize is a weka, which are all over the South Island. This was some middle schoolers as part of the RoboCup Junior competition. There's a dance competition, so they built, this is in Germany, they built this rock and roll singer. And you can see the amount of science and physics especially that you have to understand, from centers of mass to friction, to make this thing work is huge. So how can we get this more into the classroom? This was at the university level. Students were given an NXT, a couple motors, and a simple program. Just turn the motors on, and 25 pieces. And the idea was to see how many different ways they could put the pieces together to get different behaviors out of their robots. And you can see very rapidly you start to give them all sorts of different characteristics and personalities. But in each of these cases, the program and the pieces are all exactly the same, just used in different ways. This next one's my favorite. Tries hard, but never really gets anywhere. Or there's this option. This was out of a high school in Luxembourg. This is Gaston. If you shake hands with Gaston, he will either decide he likes you or not like you, depending on the temperature of your hand. What was impressive about Gaston is he actually had two microphones, one in each ear. And the students actually wrote a program that did a cross-correlation between the two mics and could determine where the sound was coming from and would follow you around as you talked. What was also impressive about Gaston is the whole effort was led by a 10th grader who was having all sorts of social issues because his parents had undergone an ugly divorce, and he had completely withdrawn within himself. And actually, by leading this group is what pulled him back out of his doldrums. So it serves actually more purposes than just teaching math, science, and engineering. This was one that was done by my students as a final project. It's actually gives you the ability to cook hamburgers. So, because no one really wants to cook hamburgers for themselves. So the first thing you want to do is take your frozen burger and stick it into your George Foreman grill. They found out the hard way that veggie burgers stick. Didn't work very well. You need really greasy hamburgers. And then you've already chosen what condiments you want on your hamburger. So you add the cheese. All condiments go in the upper left-hand corner. They were Mac users. And ironically, one of the students ate so many hamburgers they actually got sick on them. But anyway. But we put this on the web, and actually a bunch of 8th graders in Switzerland saw it, and they decided they had to be able to do the same thing. And what's ironic is that they came to a teacher who had never done this before, who had no computers, who had no Lego, and said they wanted to do it. She found Lego, she found computers, and she was amazed at how these kids were coming in at recess, staying late, to build a hamburger maker. It's now become part of the school. They do hot chocolate makers and all sorts of other things. And they really enjoy it. And as you can see, they're amazing film editors, too. You watch this too many times and you feel a little nauseous, but... You'd eat that burger, wouldn't you? So I guess then the next thing is really, if this is so exciting and so interesting, why is it not in more classrooms? And what we've seen is there are basically 5 reasons that it doesn't get into classrooms. Number 1 is the teaching style is completely different. It's actually, in hearing more and more about Google, it's very similar to what's happening in Google. It's about mentorship and about enabling as opposed to about telling. And most people teach the way they were taught. So to break that cycle takes a little bit of work and innovation on the part of the teacher. The next is that there's no right answer. You'd be amazed at how many teachers get really frustrated with us because they want to know what the right answer is, because if the kid asks them questions, they want to be able to tell the kid whether or not the kid's on the right track. Well, of course, there's a million different ways you could cook hamburgers with Lego bricks. So there is no right answer, and that teachers find difficult. In the days of standardized testing, you have to get to chapter 12. Well, if you're going to take time to build a Lego hamburger maker, you might only make it to chapter 6. So how do you actually balance out what you need to cover for the standardized test and how you actually cover it? And this is something we spend a lot of time working with teachers on. The content knowledge, engineering is not usually taught to pre-college teachers. And so how do we change that? And then lastly, if you take this into a classroom, you will find that the kids are up and running around and excited and asking questions. Sometimes they're in tears. There's a lot of emotions. There's a lot of noise. It's chaos. And most teachers are used to quiet classrooms where they can manage it. So teaching through chaos is a lot harder to do. And believe me, when you come home from a day of it, you're a lot more tired. So that takes a while to get used to as well. So how can we actually start to make this happen in classrooms? Well, the first is to actually try and build virtual communities. So we have legoengineering.com where teachers around the world share ideas. We have a bunch of activities and talk about a bunch of the research that's happening to show what are the best ways or most effective ways to bring this into classrooms. We have conferences where we work with teachers mainly in Europe, North America, and Asia. But we're trying to expand that out into Africa as well. Not to Antarctica, though, to give people a chance to meet other teachers and hear what other teachers are doing, and then to actually play with the tools as well. Another program that we've started at Tufts is called STOMP, Student Teacher Outreach Mentorship Program. And here the idea is, if we're asking Mrs. Smith-Myers to teach something she doesn't understand in a way that she is not used to teaching, with technology that has a habit of causing problems, computers crash, batteries die, and teaching with chaos going on, that it's really only fair to do that and give her a little bit of help. So we started a program at Tufts where we actually pay our undergraduates to go into the classroom and help Mrs. Smith-Myers out. And what we rapidly found is not only does Mrs. Smith-Myers benefit, but our students are benefiting a lot as they are starting to learn how to communicate, learning how to lead, and actually learn how to try and help the educational programs in their local area. So you can see here, there are a couple more examples of Lego robotic animals, always a favorite. This is one of the ways we train our STOMP students. This one's probably my favorite. I don't know how many Lego sloths you've seen before, but this one actually does move rather slowly. So the last part of what we're developing is new and other ways to allow people to tell their stories. So what if you could tell your story, and your story included a stop-action movie, your story included data, it included a program, it included text, it included a movie. And so that's what we're calling RoboBooks. And in fact, this whole presentation I'm showing you is actually built into a RoboBook. So you'll notice how I'm running a lot of stuff from within the presentation. It's PowerPoint, but with robotics built in, essentially. So how can I tell my story? Well, my story might have a program that I would download into my NXT and run it. So I can get my data back. So as it's running, it's taking some data. We can move things around to get some data out. I might want to then get that data and share it in my book. So it pulls the data off. I might want to type some, and I'm an amazingly fast typer, information. Or I might want to actually just simply grab a picture of what I'm doing. And then once I've got this whole story together, I submit it to my teacher. So my teacher gets really more of a blog than a single written assignment. And what we're finding is that kids actually take much more ownership of it because they're able to interact with it in so many different ways than just simply writing a report. There's a second part, though. What if I can figure out a way to not only let kids share their stories, but to let teachers share their stories? So imagine a day when you're a third grade teacher and you download off the web an activity that you think is pretty cool, and you run it in your classroom. And you know, you run it the first year, it works okay, but you'd like to change it a little bit. So in year 2, you change the text a little bit. In year 3, you make it match your local standards, so it matches California state standards. By year 5, you've completely changed it so it teaches math and science that is on the state standards, and you put it back up onto this iTunes world. And then the Norwegian teacher downloads it, translates it into Norwegian, and puts it back up there. And the Massachusetts teacher takes it down, translates it into Massachusetts standards, and puts it back up there. So what we're hoping is that in 5 or 10 years, we can get a complete set of curriculum across all age groups, covering all subjects in all languages and meeting all standards, something that would be prohibitively expensive for any company to do. So that's sort of what we're doing. Now it's the time for me to turn it around and actually make the pitch. So really, how can we get you guys involved? So what can you do to actually make some of these changes happen in your kids' schools or your local schools? So the first obvious one is to simply...
Clear that with Google legal.
I did. I have a...
Oh my God.
It took me $2.5 million and... no, I didn't put the TM there, so it's obviously some other Google. I had the different colors. You know, the third letter is actually, no. So the first one is simply just to play with your kids doing mathematics, robotics, or whatever, finding different ways to actually work with your kids to build stuff. And hopefully most of you guys are doing a lot of that already. And if you don't have kids, play with your neighbor's kids. It's a whole lot of fun. The next one is to actually get involved with your local school. The reason teachers teach is because they truly love teaching. It's not for the outrageous salaries that they make or all the perks that they get or the fact that they have to pay for their own pencils for the classroom. So they are always very excited and interested to do stuff that gets the kids more excited. It's just a number of times it's really difficult to do it on your own. So an extra set of hands makes a big difference. So one of the things that I think that would be really neat that I would love to see is a Google Stomp program. We have Stomp programs now with a number of different companies, National Instruments, Raytheon, Foster Miller, Symantec. We're starting one with iRobot. So there's a number of different models out there. And what we've found is that, first of all, the teachers really like it. It helps them out. They have that extra set of hands. It's very important, though, that if you do go into classrooms, you go in as an assistant, that you don't take over the classroom, but you do as the teacher tells you to do, because that will guarantee that Mrs. Smith-Myers will continue to do it even if you're not there. So Google Stomp program, we train volunteers how to go in and be effective in the classroom, get materials. There's the help desk, work with school systems, and school system with a T as well. I'm not really sure what that T is all about. And the benefits are, number one is you're helping change STEM education. Number two, actually, the one reason I love doing it is I got to meet all my kids' friends. Number three, we found in the companies that we work with that actually you get increased employer retention because they feel that they're being allowed to do stuff that actually affects their family and for their becoming active citizens. The other thing that I'd like to advertise or pitch would be to try and collaborate more. You guys have an incredible reach, as you well know. And one of the places I could see a great collaboration happening is there a way that we can, right now within YouTube, you can actually, as I'm sure you all know, make your own movies. Why don't we have the ability to make your own stop-action movies as well? And can we actually use that as the place where people can do stop-action physics and stop-action chemistry and biology and mathematics? Your strengths in the virtual community are something that I see that you could help us out a lot in making a difference. And then finally, it seems to me that there's no reason that the RoboBook that I showed you couldn't also be a Google Doc. Google Docs would have to be able to control robots, but we could certainly help there. So those were a couple ways that I was thinking that we could have an effective collaboration to actually start making a lot of these changes happen in local schools around here. So I thought I would end with probably the most complicated Lego robot system I've ever seen. And this was a doctoral thesis at ETH in Switzerland. What we have is actually a fruit fly that drives a robot around for you. So what we have is we've taken a fruit fly, or the student here took a fruit fly and mounted it inside this set of LEDs. So it's a little known fact that fruit flies fly based on optical feedback. So if they see things going by slowly, they try and speed up. If they see things going by fast, they try and slow down. If they see things going by at different speeds, they think they're turning, and they try and turn to get away from that problem. So we can actually control how the fruit fly flies by changing its visual system. So you can see here, there's the fruit fly. And there's Chauncey, the one who did this work. And so he's got a Lego robot with 2 ultrasound sensors on it. And when he sticks his hand over one, the fruit fly's visual information changes, and the fruit fly tries to move its wings accordingly. And so what he's programmed is to make the fruit fly actually turn into any object it sees. By how he changes the optical feedback, he then picks up the wing positions, and those wing positions control the motors of the vehicle. So you'll see when he sticks it on the floor, most of the time, it'll actually turn in towards him. Now, fruit flies are actually fairly cheap labor, so they don't have the quality control you would hope for, and so sometimes they turn in the wrong direction. So he was actually doing doctoral work looking at trying to model the fruit fly thought process as a control system, but this was something that we decided had to be tried because it was too much fun to have a fruit fly controlled robot. We did have to deal with the fruit fly rights activists. That took a while. But so here's a little kid that walked by the booth and found that some of the times the fruit fly would actually drive at her, and found that a little bit confusing. So anyway, so that's all I have. Thank you very much. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and thanks. So who's got questions? Yeah.
Well, I have a question. What does it take to equip a third-grade classroom, or any grade, but elementary school classroom? How much equipment do you need, and what does it cost?
So the question was, how much does it cost to equip a third-grade classroom? To do Lego engineering, it costs something on the order of $2,000 for a classroom, which we've found that getting the money is usually not a problem. You can usually find local industry to donate it. Getting the support that the teacher needs is the bigger issue. So, yeah.
How much is going on in the area of Lego robotics and education? Are there other programs that are out there? Are you guys the biggest?
So the question was, what other programs are there in robotics-based education or Lego-based education? There are a number of programs out there. We are not the biggest. We just work with Lego in developing the tools primarily. So there are books. There are a number of good books, from College House books for middle school science, for elementary school engineering, for high school. science and engineering. There are a number of different companies that will actually work with you to do this stuff. The best person to talk to on that is your local Lego distributor. They'll know about them. A lot of universities are doing this in the university and have outreach programs in the local schools. Yeah. That's a good question. So there's a couple questions in there. The question was really, is there a way to measure success? And the first question there is really, what do you mean by success? Is it motivation and excitement? Is it better scores on the, whatever your version of the MCAS standardized testing are? So there are studies that are going on right now centered around all of those. The second part of the question is more of a classroom management system, is how do you ensure that one person doesn't take over the group? And we have some programs where we try and work with teachers to teach them some of the ideas that other teachers have found that are effective in the classroom to stop that from happening. The younger kids, usually the younger male kids, are the biggest issues in the kindergarten, first grade. Getting males in particular to work in teams is not that easy. Ironically, the girls, actually, that's the reason they like the engineering time, is because they like the chance to work with their friends in a social environment. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yes. So this is all right. This is all about improving their math learning or their science learning. And so they take the standard science tests or the standard math tests at the end, as well as, of course, the standardized tests. We are working on trying to find ways to do testing that's not pencil and paper, so asking you to build something and analyze how well you built it, but that's still in development. Yeah.
I feel obligated to mention that for at least 4th through 8th grade, there's the first Lego League, which doesn't necessarily need a school foundation, which just requires somebody to form a team. Of course, that's all over until next September.
There are a number of different after-school programs. There's First Lego League, there's RoboCup Junior, there's the World Robotics Olympiad. Those are the big ones. These are all excellent things to get your children involved with. They teach a whole lot about engineering and teamwork and so on. The idea is really to have something like a sport, but be engineering and math and science based. However, those do not directly affect the classroom. And so a lot of the stuff we do is really about that classroom, so that it's every child in every grade. But they do indirectly affect it. I think half or 3/4 of the First Lego League coaches are actually teachers. Yeah?
How much time in the class does it take to sort of ramp up one of these projects and get the kids familiar with equipment, and how much actual time is spent?
That's a good question. So the question was, how long does it actually take to do one of these activities inside the classroom? And that, first of all, is highly age dependent. But usually what I would recommend is something on the order of an hour or two, hour to an hour and a half a day, twice a week, for roughly 3 to 4 weeks to really have a continuous program. You'll be amazed at how quickly the kids will pick it up. They're really super fast at doing this stuff. Yeah.
The new education secretary seems to be, or secretary to be, seems to be a lot more open-minded about the various approaches to having non-traditional teachers involved, and also he's less interested in the standardized testing. How hopeful are you that there could be a turnaround given this new administration and Obama's views on things?
I'm hopeful that there will be a turnaround if Obama turns it around in his 4/8-year term. I'll be amazed. It's a huge amount of time and investment and momentum that's gone into it. But I am hoping they will at least lighten up and realize that there's more to life than just making sure that everybody has exactly the same skills and doing exactly the same thing on Tuesday at 1 o'clock in their classroom, whether they're in Texas or in California.
Are any of your companies or corporate partners, would they be helpful in somehow getting together with the new secretary, to try to kind of give our views of things?
Yeah, that would be great. I haven't really gone down that road much at all. But if you know them, I'll give them a call. All right. Any other questions? Yeah.
Were all those Lego blocks are using standard parts, or you have to build custom sensors and outputs?
There are 50 different sensors that we support now on the NXT. So we can sense pretty much anything. However, one of the sensors is actually a breadboard, so you can build your own sensors. So there are books out that are how to build your own sensor and do different stuff like that, which is fun too. And I use that at the college level. That's usually not in elementary school. Yeah.
How would you compare the NXT and other kinds of robotics kits for like middle school kids in terms of what you can do with them and how easy it is to get started on low budget?
Okay, so the question was, how do you compare all the different robotics kits out there available for middle schools? To my mind, it really doesn't matter which you use as long as you're doing it. So if there's a teacher that's really psyched about the Arduino or something like that, great, support them in that. The Lego has a couple of advantages. One, it works out of the box. Two, the motors are already big and easy and fast to connect. Three, there's a number of different softwares out there available for it. So if you like graphical programming or C or Java or whatever else you want to do, it's available. And four, there are a lot of different sensors that you can use with it. So that's what makes it nice. But of course, I'm biased because I've spent so much time working with it. And yeah, and five, when you say Lego, every child knows what you're talking about. Yeah. That's a question for Bill.
Yeah, so the question was that there might be a lot of parents at Google, or maybe other people aren't yet parents, or maybe will never be parents, Googlers, who might be interested in a Google Stomp program or something like this, and how do we get started? I think that's a conversation we got to have. I think it would be great if we could, if there is enough interest, it'd be great to get a project like that going. If you're interested, you can contact me directly. And I'll work with Jeff Waltz and other people and see if we can figure out how to get something organized. I'm Bill Weil, W-E-I-H-L.
All right. Anything else? Well, thanks a lot.